In the rain-soaked wreckage of what was meant to be her execution, an old money heiress is abandoned by her fiancé who chose his mistress over her life. Kenji, the ghost moon, the city's most ruthless mafia CEO, appears in the storm like he's been waiting, offering Zora Vance a choice: die as Julian Ross's discarded victim, or vanish into his empire and become a weapon. Zora chooses survival, and Kenji takes her to his fortress, where she's immediately declared dead to the world. The crash site is a graveyard of metal and broken promises. Rain hammers down in sheets, turning the asphalt into a black mirror that reflects red and blue lights. Lights that flicker in the distance but never seem to get closer. Gasoline spreads across the ground like an omen, its fumes mixing with smoke and the metallic tang of blood. Zora Vance is trapped in the driver's seat, her designer dress soaked through, her engagement ring catching the last flickers of the car's dying electrical system. Through the shattered passenger window, her vision blurs and sharpens, blurs and sharpens. She sees him. Julian Ross stands on the other side of the wreckage, pulling her assistant, his secret lover, from the passenger door. The woman is screaming, clawing at Julian's jacket, but he gets her out. He gets her to safety. For one horrible second, Julian looks back at Zora. Their eyes meet across the ruins of what was supposed to be their life together. She sees the calculation, the choice he's already made. Then he turns and he runs. The 911 call he never made echoes in the silence he leaves behind. Zora's breathing is shallow, her vision is darkening at the edges. She thinks about how poetic it would be, the old money heiress burning alive in a car her fiancé drove them both into a ditch to stage. She thinks about how Julian will cry at her funeral, how he'll inherit everything. That's when the umbrella appears. A massive black canopy tilts into her fading line of sight, blocking out the rain. Water cascades off its edges in perfect rivulets. The umbrella lifts, and Zora sees him for the first time. Kenji Moon, the ghost. He's dressed in a black suit that costs more than most people's cars, perfectly tailored, without a single drop of rain on him despite the storm. His face is beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful, sharp, cold, precise. He crouches beside the wreckage with the calm of a man who has all the time in the world, studying her the way a jeweler studies a diamond that's finally come up for auction. "You're bleeding quite a lot, Miss Vance," he says. His voice is quiet, almost gentle. It doesn't match the reputation. Kenji Moon is the man the monsters in this city whisper about, the CEO of Moon Enterprises by day, the architect of the underworld by night, the ghost who sees everything, controls everything, and never, ever shows mercy. But right now, he's looking at her like she's something precious. "He left you," Kenji observed, glancing in the direction Julian fled. "The man who promised you forever just chose 60 seconds with her instead." Zora tries to speak, but only blood comes out. Kenji tilts his head, considering. "You can bleed out here as Julian Ross's mistake, Miss Vance. The police won't arrive for another 8 minutes. I made sure of that. The fire will reach the fuel line in 4. Or," he extends his hand through the broken window, palm up, like he's asking her to dance, "you can disappear with me and become his nightmare." His hand is steady, dry, impossibly clean in the middle of this chaos. "Choose quickly," Kenji says softly. The fire doesn't wait for broken hearts. Zora's hand moves before her brain catches up. Trembling, covered in blood, she reaches through the shattered glass and places her hand in his. Kenji's fingers close around hers, not like a rescuer grabbing a victim, like a man claiming something that's always belonged to him. He pulls her from the wreckage with surgical efficiency, one hand supporting her back, the other beneath her knees, lifting her like she weighs nothing. He wraps her in his coat, and it smells like expensive cologne and gunpowder. As he carries her toward a blacked-out SUV, Zora's consciousness flickers. The last thing she sees before the darkness takes her is Kenji's face as he places her in the back seat. He's looking at her the way Julian used to look at her trust fund. No, not quite. Julian looked at her money like an opportunity. Kenji looks at her like a hunter looks at prey he's been tracking for years, finally cornered, finally within reach. But Zora's vision goes dark before she can process what that means. Before we dive in, understand this. What you're about to hear isn't just drama, it's a total collision between the past and the present. It's the story of Zora Vance, a woman who survived a literal hell designed by the person she trusted most. We're looking at a man who thought control was love, and a silent figure in the shadows who's about to prove that loyalty, once broken, doesn't just hurt, it detonates. Now, if you've been watching stories like this on the channel and haven't subscribed yet, look, no pressure, but if by the end of this story your chest feels tight, if you catch yourself holding your breath when the ghost appears, or if that moment in the rain stays with you longer than it should, then tap that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Because stories like this, they don't just entertain, they linger. All right, let me show you how everything unraveled. Julian Ross's hands are shaking as he pulls Elena from the passenger seat. Glass cuts his palms, rain soaks through his Armani shirt, and somewhere behind him, he can hear Zora calling his name, calling for help, calling for him. He doesn't look back. Elena is screaming, her nails digging into his arms as he drags her across the wet asphalt. Julian! Julian, we have to go back! Zora's still... She's fine, Julian snaps, even though he knows that's a lie. He saw the steering column crushed against her chest, saw the blood spreading across her white dress like a bouquet of roses he never bothered to buy her. The ambulance is coming. That's a lie, too. He didn't call. His phone is in his pocket, dry and untouched, because calling 911 means questions. Questions mean investigations. Investigations mean people discovering that he drove them into this ditch on purpose, that he cut the brake line this morning, that he needs Zora's death certificate to access the trust funds before his creditors break his legs. Elena stumbles, and Julian catches her. For a moment, he looks into her eyes, wide and terrified, and so much cheaper to love than Zora ever was. No inheritance, no legacy, no board meetings and charity galas, and the crushing weight of being Marcus Vance's daughter. Just Elena, simple, uncomplicated Elena, who doesn't ask questions when he comes home smelling like whiskey and failure. Behind them, something in the car ignites. A small pop, then a whoosh of flame crawling toward the fuel line. Julian's last glimpse of his fiancée is through the rear window, Zora, trapped and reaching, backlit by fire. He turns away. He runs, and he never sees the black umbrella appear in the rain behind him, or the ghost who's been waiting for him to do exactly this. Kenji's fortress isn't on any map. It sits 30 floors above the city in a building that doesn't officially exist, not to tax assessors, not to city planning, not even to the people who work in the legitimate floors below. The elevator requires a biometric scan and a 16-digit code that changes every 6 hours. Zora doesn't remember the ride up. She doesn't remember the private medical team that stitched her back together, or the way Kenji stood in the corner of the sterile white room watching every suture with the focus of a man overseeing the restoration of priceless art. She only remembers waking up. The bedroom is larger than her childhood suite at the Vance estate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlook a city dressed in twilight and neon. Everything is black marble and chrome, sharp edges and soft sheets, a study in controlled violence pretending to be luxury. There's a tablet on the nightstand. Her hands shake as she opens it. The headline loads slowly, each word a nail in a coffin she didn't know was being built. Vance heiress dead in tragic accident. Her face stares back from the screen, the charity gala photo from last year, the one she smiled like she believed Julian loved her. The article has quotes from devastated friends. Julian is reportedly in seclusion, too grief-stricken to comment. The timestamp reads 6 hours ago. She was still unconscious 6 hours ago. You needed to die to be reborn. Zora's head snaps up. Kenji stands in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee, looking like a CEO about to discuss quarterly earnings, not a man who just erased someone's entire existence. I simply made it official, he says, setting 1 cup beside her. Steam rises between them like a peace offering from the devil himself. Welcome to the underworld, Zora. You're mine now. Kenji's surveillance room is a shrine of omniscience. 12 screens cover the wall, each one a window into lives that don't know they're being watched. Zora stands in the center of the room, her reflection fractured across the monitors, while Kenji sits in a leather chair behind her, like a director watching his film premiere. Screen 7, he says, quietly. Zora's eyes find it. Her own memorial service, live-streamed from the Vance Estate's grand ballroom. Black roses and white lilies, a string quartet playing Chopin, 200 people in designer mourning attire, pretending they cared about her when she was alive. And there, in the front row, Julian Ross. He's wearing the Tom Ford suit she bought him for our engagement party. His head is bowed, his shoulders shaking with what the cameras will call grief. Elena sits 3 rows back, dabbing at dry eyes with a handkerchief. Zora watches Julian stand to give the eulogy. His voice cracks in the right places. He talks about her kindness, her generosity, how she made him want to be a better man. He doesn't mention the assistant he's been effing for 8 months, doesn't mention the gambling debts he was drowning in, doesn't mention how he left her bleeding in a ditch while he saved the woman who's been embezzling from Zora's own charitable foundation. The cameras catch what the mourners don't see. Julian's hand reaching back between the pews, Elena's fingers threading through his, the small secret smile they share when they think no one's looking. He'll file for access to your estate tomorrow, Kenji says from behind her. The life insurance alone is $12 million. Zora's hands curl into fists. How long have you been watching him? Long enough to know he's been planning this for 6 months. Kenji stands, moving beside her, long enough to let him think he won. On screen 7, Julian wipes crocodile tears. Zora smiles for the first time since the crash. Good. The boutique closes for them at midnight. Zora stands in the center of Cartier's flagship store, surrounded by cases of diamonds that cost more than most people's houses, while Kenji leans against the counter like he owns the place. He probably does. Everything. he tells the manager, a woman who appeared the moment they walked in despite the closed sign on the door. Julian Ross ever touched. The manager's eyes gleam. Of course, Mr. Moon. Zora still wears the hospital clothes, black cashmere that isn't hers, borrowed luxury from a man who apparently plans every detail. Her engagement ring is gone. Kenji removed it himself while she was unconscious, disposed of it like the lie it always was. Now he's replacing it with an empire. Dresses appear first. Not the demure pastels and pearls her mother insisted made her look respectable. These are weapons. Black silk that moves like water, crimson velvet cut to devastate, emerald satin with a neckline that would make the Vance estate board clutch their stock portfolios. Shoes next. Louboutin, Jimmy Choo, custom Italian leather in shades of violence and seduction. Then jewelry. A diamond choker that cost more than Julian's car, sapphire earrings that match nothing except Kenji's cold assessment of what she deserves. A watch that tells time in 6 countries, none of them the one where Zora Vance is supposed to be dead. Old money whispers, Kenji says, fastening the choker around her neck himself. His fingers brush her throat, precise and possessive. New money shouts, but blood money? He steps back to admire his work. Blood money doesn't need to make a sound. It just takes what it wants. The final receipt reads $10,400,000. Kenji signs it without blinking. Welcome to your resurrection, Zora. Let's make sure Julian Ross feels every penny. The gun feels heavier than Zora expected. Kenji's private range sits in the sub-basement of the fortress, soundproof and sterile, smelling of gunpowder and cold ambition. Target silhouettes hang 50 feet away, faceless paper men waiting to be destroyed. Your stance is wrong, Kenji says, moving behind her. His hands adjusts her shoulders, her hips, repositioning her body like she's a sculpture he's perfecting. Revenge isn't about anger, it's about precision. He guides her finger to the trigger. Breathe in, hold, fire on the exhale. The recoil surprises her. The bullet punches through the target's shoulder, close but not fatal. Again, Kenji commands. By the 100th round, Zora stops flinching. By the 200th, every shot finds the heart. The stock market trading floor is different warfare, but Kenji teaches it the same way, cold, methodical, ruthless. They sit in his office at 4 a.m., 3 monitors glowing with numbers that represent empires rising and falling. Kenji points to a graph that looks like a heartbeat flatlining. Julian's primary investor is Blackwell Capital. They're exposed in commercial real estate, over-leveraged by 40%. If the downtown development deal collapses, they'll liquidate everything to cover margins, including Julian's startup loan. Zora finishes, understanding blooming like poison flowers. Exactly. Kenji pulls up another screen. I own the construction permits for that development. One phone call and Julian's lifeline disappears. He hands her his phone. Make the call. Zora's finger hovers over the contact. One press, one sentence. Julian loses everything. She makes the call. When she hangs up, Kenji is watching her with something that might be pride, might be possession. You're learning, he says. Money isn't power. Knowing exactly where to cut is. The package arrives at 3 a.m. Elena wakes to find it on her nightstand, a black velvet box tied with white ribbon, placed there while she slept beside Julian in the penthouse they moved into 3 days after Zora's funeral. No forced entry, no alarms triggered, just the box sitting there like a gift from a ghost. Zora watches it all unfold on Kenji's surveillance screens. Elena's hands shake as she opens the box. Inside, nestled in white satin, is the engagement ring, the 5-carat diamond Julian gave Zora 2 years ago, the one that was supposed to be buried with her body. Except there was no body to bury, just a closed casket and Julian's crocodile tears. And the ring isn't clean. Dark stains streak across the platinum band, dried into the grooves of the setting. It could be rust, it could be dirt from the crash site, or it could be exactly what it looks like: blood. Elena screams. Julian bolts upright, sees the box, goes white. Where did you... How did... It was just here. Elena scrambles backward, the ring tumbling onto the sheets between them like an accusation. Someone was in the room, Julian. Someone put this here while we were sleeping.
On the surveillance feed, Zora watches Julian pick up the ring with trembling fingers. She watches him turn it over, searching for an explanation that won't damn him. Watches the exact moment he realizes if someone can get into his bedroom undetected, someone knows everything. "It's just a coincidence," Julian says, but his voice cracks. "Someone found it at the crash site? They're just... with my address?" Elena's voice climbs toward hysteria. "On my nightstand?" Kenji leans back in his chair, a small smile playing at his lips. The first cut is always the sweetest. Zora doesn't disagree. The ceremony happens in Kenji's penthouse at midnight, witnessed by shadows and signed in something darker than ink. No white dress, no flowers, no illusions of romance. Zora wears black Valentino, a cut like armor, like a declaration of war. Kenji stands across from her in a 3-piece Tom Ford suit, looking less like a groom and more like a king accepting a queen who finally stopped pretending she had a choice. The officiant is Kenji's lawyer, a man who specializes in contracts that never see courtrooms and signatures that can't be undone. He reads the terms like a business transaction, because that's exactly what this is. This union grants Mrs. Moon full protection under the Moon family name, access to all associated assets and enterprises, and immunity from any legal proceedings related to her former identity. Former identity, like Zora Vance really is dead. In exchange, the lawyer continues, Mrs. Moon agrees to irrevocable loyalty to the Moon family interests, participation in all business ventures as directed, and, he pauses, glancing at Kenji, exclusivity in all matters personal and professional. Zora meets Kenji's eyes. They're darker than usual, hungry in a way that has nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with possession. Sign, Kenji says softly. The contract sits between them on black marble. Her hand hovers over the page. This isn't a marriage license. It's a binding agreement that makes her Kenji in every way that matters. His partner, his weapon, his Empress. His. She signs. Her signature is steadier than it was on her engagement papers to Julian. Kenji signs beneath hers, and when the ink dries, he produces a ring. Not a diamond, a black band etched with characters she doesn't recognize, Korean symbols that probably translate to mine in 12 different threatening ways. He slides it onto her finger himself. Mrs. Moon, he says, and it sounds like a promise and a prison sentence. Kenji undresses like he's revealing classified information. They're in his private study, post-ceremony champagne untouched on the desk, when he shrugs off his jacket and begins unbuttoning his shirt. Zora watches, uncertain if this is consummation or something else entirely. It's something else. The tattoo starts at his shoulder blade and coils down his entire back, a Korean dragon rendered in black ink and silver highlights, so detailed she can see individual scales. The dragon's body wraps around his ribs, its tail disappearing beneath his belt line, its head resting over his heart, with eyes that seem to follow her. In my family, Kenji says, turning so she can see the full masterpiece, the dragon marks the head of the clan. My father had it, his father before him. He pulls his shirt back on, covering the beast. Now it's mine, and so are you. He crosses to his desk, pulling up a document on his tablet. Zora takes the tablet. It's a deed. The Meridian Towers, the luxury high-rise where Julian moved Elena after Zora's funeral, paid for with what he thought would be his inheritance. You bought his building? I bought his building. Kenji's smile is surgical. The eviction notice hits his door at 8 a.m. He has 30 days to vacate. No extensions, no appeals. Where will he go? That's not your concern. Kenji reclaims the tablet, pulling up another screen. This is a forwarded email, Julian's panicked message to his lawyer, trying to expedite Zora's estate liquidation. The debts are stacking up faster than he anticipated. His investors are circling. Elena's expensive tastes are bleeding him dry. He's drowning, Kenji says simply, and we haven't even pushed his head underwater yet. Zora stares at the screen at Julian's desperation rendered in corporate language and legal jargon. Push, she whispers. Kenji's hand covers hers on the tablet. With pleasure, Mrs. Moon. Julian's desperation smells like expensive cologne and cheap decisions. The merger gala is his last play, a black-tie auction of Zora's legacy dressed up as strategic restructuring. He's selling Vance Industries piece by piece to the highest bidders, using his position as her surviving fiancé to convince the board that Zora would have wanted the company to evolve beyond the family name. Zora watches the invitation arrive via Kenji's intercepted emails, gold embossing on cream cardstock. The Vance estate, her childhood home, now a stage for her own corporate execution. He's invited every vulture in the city, Kenji observes, scrolling through the guest list on his tablet. Blackwell Capital, Morrison Holdings, even Chen International is sending representatives. He needs at least 60 million to cover his debts, she says. She's learned to read financial statements the way Kenji taught her, like autopsy reports, showing exactly where the body failed. 73 million, Kenji corrects. The gambling debts are worse than he told Elena. He's been taking private loans from people who don't accept late payments. He pulls up another document. He's prepared to sell controlling interest in Vance Industries for 42 million. It's worth 300 million, but he doesn't have time to negotiate. Zora stares at her family's company, reduced to a fire sale number. 4 generations of her bloodline about to be liquidated because Julian Ross needed to cover his roulette habit. We're going, Zora says. Kenji looks up. To the gala? You said I needed a public resurrection. Zora meets his eyes, and something predatory passes between them. Let's make it biblical. Kenji's smile could cut glass. I'll have your dress ready. Make it red, Zora says. I want him to see the blood before he realizes it's his. The dress costs more than Julian's debts. Blood-red silk that moves like liquid violence, custom Valentino with a neckline that plunges to devastation. Diamonds cascade down the bodice, not sewn, but embedded, so she glitters like a weapon catching light. Her hair is pulled back severe and unforgiving, showing off the sapphire earrings Kenji gave her, the black wedding band that marks her as a moon. She looks nothing like the soft, accommodating Zora Vance who died in that car. She looks like revenge learned to walk in Louboutins. Kenji offers his arm at the entrance to the Vance estate ballroom. He's in midnight Tom Ford, looking every inch of the dangerous king he is. Ready? Zora's smile could start wars. I was born ready. The ballroom falls silent the moment they appeared. 200 guests in designer mourning attire gathered to witness the dismembering of her empire. All freeze mid-conversation. Champagne glasses pause halfway to lips. The string quartet's Vivaldi die mid-measure. And Julian Julian is at the center of the room, Elena on his arm, mid-laugh with a Blackwell Capital executive. His champagne flute slips from his fingers in slow motion. Crystal shatters against marble like a gunshot. His face drains of all color.
No!
He whispers, then louder, stumbling backward. No! Zora doesn't run to him, doesn't shout, doesn't explain. She simply walks into her own memorial gala on the arm of the most dangerous man in the city, head high, diamonds catching every light, very much alive and absolutely unforgiving. The room erupts in chaos, gasps, screams, phones capturing everything. Julian backs away from the screens like they're sentencing him, which they are. That's not, I didn't, he spins toward Zora, desperate. You're alive. This doesn't matter. You survived. Attempted murder still carries 20 years, Kenji says calmly. The police enter from the side doors, not a coincidence, perfectly timed. They've been waiting. Julian's knees hit marble as handcuffs click around his wrists. Zora watches him collapse in front of everyone who matters. She doesn't feel satisfaction. She feels powerful. The boardroom has been waiting for her. Zora walks into Vance Industries headquarters 3 days after Julian's arrest, and every executive stands, not out of respect for the ghost they buried, out of fear of the woman who rose from that grave wearing a moon wedding ring. Gentlemen, she says, taking the head of the table, her father's chair, her grandfather's before him. Let's discuss the future of this company. The merger is canceled. The vulture investors are expelled. Every contract Julian signed is voided on grounds of fraud. He never had legal authority over her estate because Zora Vance never actually died. She just evolved. The new letterhead arrives that afternoon. Vance Moon Industries, a hyphenate that makes every competitor in the city nervous. Old money married to blood money, legacy fused with empire. Kenji doesn't attend the board meeting. He doesn't need to. His presence is implied in every decision Zora makes, every ruthless restructuring, every executive she replaces with people who understand that mercy is no longer company policy. That evening, she watches the news coverage from Kenji's penthouse. Julian's assets have been seized, his accounts frozen. Elena has fled to her mother's house in Connecticut, singing to prosecutors about every crime Julian confessed in their bed. He'll spend the next 20 years in prison, watching Zora rebuild everything he tried to burn. How does it feel? Kenji asks, handing her champagne. Zora looks out over the city, her city now, shared with the man who orchestrated her resurrection. Like I finally understand the difference between being loved and being owned. And which do you prefer? She meets his eyes, this dangerous man who's been watching her for 10 years, who turned her death into her rebirth. With you, Zora's smile is sharp as diamonds. They're the same thing. Kenji's kiss tastes like victory and vindication. Outside, the city bows to its new Empress. The photograph is creased from years of handling. Kenji presents it to Zora on their first anniversary, not of the contract marriage, but of the night he pulled her from the wreckage. They're in his private study, the city spread beneath them like a kingdom they conquered together. I need to show you something, he says, and for the first time since she's known him, he looks almost vulnerable. The photo is old, the edges worn soft. A teenage girl stands in the Vance estate garden, 16 years old, laughing at something off camera. She's wearing a summer dress, her hair loose and unguarded, looking nothing like the weapon she would become. Looking exactly like the girl Kenji fell in love with before she even knew his name. 10 years ago, Kenji says quietly,
I came to a charity gala my father hosted. You were there with your parents. I was there because I had to be, the heir learning the family business. He traces the edge of the photo. You smiled at me once, just once, and I decided that smile belonged to me. Zora stares at the photograph, at evidence of an obsession she never knew existed. Julian was always going to fail you, Kenji continues, so I made sure his failures happened on my timeline. The gambling debts I didn't create, but I made sure the right people owned them. The assistant I didn't plant, but I made sure she was ambitious and available. The crash. He stops. I didn't cause it, but I knew it was coming. I'd been waiting by that road for 3 weeks. You've been engineering my life for a decade, Zora whispers. I've been clearing obstacles from your path, Kenji corrects, so when you finally fell, you'd fall toward me. That's insane, she says. That's devotion, Kenji replies, exactly as he did that first morning. Zora kisses him, tasting 10 years of patient obsession. Some love stories begin with a glance. Theirs began with a ghost learning to haunt back. Sometimes the smallest hands once trapped in wreckage, carry the greatest power to change everything. Zora Vance learned that the ultimate revenge isn't just surviving, it's thriving so loudly that the person who tried to burn you can't stand the light of your success. The lesson here is simple. Never mistake a person's silence for weakness. The most dangerous people aren't the ones who scream when they are hurt. They are the ones who wait, who plan, and who rise again with an empire at their back. Thanks for watching, and remember to subscribe for more incredible stories that prove humanity and justice still exist in the darkest places. I'll see you in the next one.